So the first one that came to my mind when I was thinking back was the airport. So here I was moving to the USA, and for the first time permanently, I'm talking about. I had been there before as a visitor, as a tourist, like lots of Brits have, but here I was with a number of large cases, or bags as they're commonly termed nowadays, and here I was going to Miami Airport. Well, anyone who's been to Miami or anything close to similar to Miami Airport would know that it's a major airport. It's like, I would call it Heathrow on steroids. That's how it is to me. And I don't like Miami Airport myself, that's my opinion. But anyway, so here I was going into Miami because we were about to go and visit my husband's parents, so my new in-laws. And so I was kind of, excited. I had my stuff. And so I got off the plane and I just had normal stuff. I think it was normal anyway. So having a jar of Marmite, and I've given you the punchline now, but I'm saying that for a reason, because you can see how it built up to the crazy situation that we had. So I had packed this one jar of Marmite in one of my cases, thinking that it's just Marmite. I mean, every Brit knows that Marmite's in the cupboard usually. You either love it or you don't love it. But it's pretty harmless and it's a normal generic thing, so we all know that. But here I was with my jar of Marmite, so I got walking through stuff. I don't know whether I got through customs at this point, I can't remember, it's a while ago. But gradually I saw some police officers with their dogs, kind of sniffing around, the dogs, and I thought, okay, they're just doing their stuff, let's go. And so gradually I started to get a little bit unnerved with this, because there's my American little tiny accent. Did you pick that up? Little, but it should be little if I'm speaking proper British. So here I was getting a little bit concerned. So finally the dogs were all over my bags, or one of them, I think, the Marmite one. And so it just ended up being very embarrassing, because you probably know it's a huge illegal substance area. And I just didn't, being somebody who's not doing that, I just didn't want to be looking like I was. So I was very embarrassed. Of course, they opened it up and found out that it was Marmite and nothing more, nothing less. So, but that was pretty dumb, because I could have spared myself all that embarrassment. It was a big delay and all that. So my advice is, if you're ever going over there to visit, or moving there, just don't bother with the Marmites and the other stuff from England, because most of it you can get over there now. And I guess in those days when I first moved over there, they didn't have Marmite, so I didn't want to be without my Marmite. So anyway, number 2. So we moved to Mississippi earlier on in our marriage, and I had no idea. I was not prepared for this. So I went out in the hot, lazy morning sun to hang our washing out in the garden or the yard, and I was hanging. All of a sudden I felt this extortionate pain and stinging, like nothing I'd ever felt before. Nothing. I've had stinging nettles in England. I've had maybe mosquito bites were a bit uncomfortable, or a horsefly bite, but this was like beyond that. This was totally beyond that. And so I was hanging, washing, and I looked down thinking, what on earth is this? And then I think it was my left foot mainly, but my right as well, my whole foot, and especially between the toes, was covered in these ants. And this is my introduction, my indoctrination, if you like, into normal USA life. The fire ants. So they're not like English ants. English ants are nice. English ants maybe be a pest. They might come into your kitchen, one behind each other, looking for the spilt food or whatever. But these are aggressive. and they bite and they sting, and I had quite a bad allergic reaction actually. So of course, as soon as I saw what it was, I still didn't know about the fire ants. I was screaming, and anyone around, it's a detached house, which is normal over there, but no neighbours seemed to be around, and I was just screaming. My husband knew exactly what had happened to me, well, more or less, so he kind of just like, come on, let's get you in there, and he just spent several minutes trying to shake and rub these ants off. And then after they had finally gone, I was very distressed. I just was not expecting it. So my advice again for this one, number 2, is just be careful if you're going out. Fire ants are not completely everywhere, but they are very common on grass, very common. So if you are going barefoot or in flip-flops or something, just be careful, because they can be monstrous. They can really go to town and give you a bad allergic reaction. And I actually had that for weeks afterwards. So I then forever on after that, I was always conscious of looking for these big grey mounds that you'll often see, which means there's an ant nest close by. Do not disrupt the ant nest if you're hoping to put ant pounder down, by the way, because you need to just sprinkle it on top and leave it be and let it work. If you try and get down to the bottom of the ant nest first, that's the worst thing you can do, because they just take days and days to settle again. So anyway, let's see, number 3. My husband wanted me to carry a pepper spray around with me for self-defense. I was not at all keen on this idea. I grew up in Britain, where in my generation especially, we didn't have weapons. We had just nothing. So to have a pepper spray in my bag, actually carrying it around in my bag, or my purse, American term, but it was just very strange to me. But he wanted me to carry this whenever I was going out, and of course he was having been grown up in South Florida, he was all clued up with how it could possibly be. So he was always urging me, don't fear, but just have this if you really need it. So I hoped and prayed that I would never have to use this thing, which I never did actually. But it was in my bag the whole time. After I got used to having it in there with my other stuff, didn't think anything of it. So off I went on one of my trips to England to see my parents, to see my mum and my dad, which I'm so thankful that I did. And so on the way back at Gatwick, I think it was, or probably Heathrow actually, sorry, yeah, Heathrow. And can you guess what happened? I had this pepper spray in my bag all the time. I didn't think anything of it. In fact, I completely forgot that I even had it in my bag. So I had been walking around for the 2.5 whatever weeks that I had been in the UK with this pepper spray, which is probably, is illegal here. So when I got to Heathrow, they caught it, of course, doing their job, which I'm super glad they do. So this is another embarrassing airport incident. This time though, unfortunately, it's a legal thing that I was carrying. So I explained to them, and they could see, they gave me a chance to talk about, how it got there and why. And they could see, thank God, they can see that I wasn't trying to, get one over on the law or do anything worse with that. It was a simple mistake. And of course, I apologized several times. I was very distressed. But it was a dumb thing. It was one of those dumb things that if I thought about it carefully, I would have left it at home in Florida and then picked it up when I got home. So nothing happened. They confiscated it, made a report, had me sign something like, yes, you can take all this. I just wanted to get on my plane and go home. So they were very patient and very nice about it, I have to say, considering I had an illegal thing in my bag. So yeah, no pepper sprays if you're going to go from US back to here and back. So anyway, number 4, well, I was remembering when I was homeschooling, and our youngest son Joshua was in the family room, and I was all set up. I'm a trained teacher, and I was trying to get him organized every day. And I would say to him, just totally, again, this is a totally normal thing for me, and it does come from a bit of naivety, I have to say. It's pretty naive, I admit, but I had only just really moved to the USA, so that's my excuse, not to understand what this word meant in America. So I would commonly say to him, have you got your pencil? Have you got your ruler? And have you got your rubber? Well, any of my American friends, anybody anywhere who knows Americanisms, the culture, we all know what rubber is in America. So here we are with my, I think, 6-year-old son, and so my husband heard me say this. And of course, still, I wasn't realizing what I was saying. So he walked into, arms folded, a little bit indignant, a little bit stern, but he had a reason for that. And he said, you need to stop using that word. The word is eraser. And I have never forgotten that, never ever in my whole life. So after that, I had to change my thinking. It's a bit like the dates, the American date. When I got there, it took me a long time to remember to write the American date, the order, after having lived in England and grown up here. So it was the same with the word rubber. Over here, it's just, I say it all the time in schools. When I'm working in my class or whatever. Oh, have you got your rubbers ready? But of course over there, completely different meaning. And so I made every effort after that to never say that to him again. Okay, so last one today. This is enough boo-boos, I think, for one video, but just to round it off. So in America, they have this rule. It's called, you can turn on right on red. But there's one exception. You can't turn right on red ever when you're, of course, you're in the right-hand lane over there, completely opposite to here in England. You can't if there's a sign. If there's a sign up saying no turn on red, then no turn on red. Well, on this particular occasion, I was at a very busy intersection, and those who live in Pensacola, Florida will know where it is, on Navy Boulevard. And there is an actual sign that's hanging over. That oftentimes they have these huge traffic light things hanging down. They don't have on the side like we do normally. And they had a big sign. Well, it wasn't that big actually, because I missed it. But it was a big enough sign, and it said no turn on red. So guess what? Steffi Hayden, turn right on red. Immediately within about, I would say, 3-4 seconds, they were obviously there. I think it's been called a hotspot for catching people with that. But they were beep, sirens on, turn, move over. So I thought, oh, what have I done? What have I done now? And so they came up to the window like they do, wound the window down. And I'm sure some of you have seen the cop cam things. And they said, have you got your driving license? Blah, blah, blah. And I was so shaking. I mean, I haven't been pulled over like that. And so I just got out my ID, my registration, whatever I had to give them. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that it was no turn on red. I knew about the rule about no turn on red if there's a sign, but I didn't see the sign. And then I was just giving him a little bit of a sob story, but genuinely appealing to him, saying I'm British, and I'm not really that equated with this rule. We just don't have that in England. Please, I'm sorry. I really am. It wasn't a deliberate thing. I thought I was okay. So he was very kind to me, actually. This cop, he actually halved my fine. So I had to pay a fine, broke the rule, fair enough. But he halved it to, I think it was a moving traffic, whatever it was. but he halved it. He kind of charged me for something else, which is still a fine, but not so much money. So I was just went home a little bit upset. I was angry with myself, really, that I didn't see that sign. But anyway, there we go. There's 5 ways that I did dumb things when I moved to the States, and all these things happened, I would say, for the with the exception of the last one, which was a few years into me living there. But I should have known better. But I'm still not used to signs now. There's certain things that I'm not used to. Another video, I'll tell you about the school bus thing. Anyway, thanks for watching.